Hello, hockey fans, and welcome to a new episode of Anatomy of a Season, the show where I cover a given season of a given team in the NHL. On this series, I covered winners, losers, the greatest, the worst, the glorious, and the outright pathetic. And speaking of outright pathetic, the team I'm covering on this episode might even be worse than that. Oh boy, the 1980-81 Winnipeg Jets. A team that even this season's San Jose Sharks can look at and say, wow, what a bunch of losers. I mean, look at this picture. Even if bad teams we've covered in the past, you've seen some of them still smiling, actually quite a few of them. But many in this picture are pretty much saying, yeah, just give us our damn minor league assignments already. I mean, look at the front row where team captain Morris Lukovic is. He has that look as if to say, the WHA is folding, and we're going to the NHL, they said. It'll be fun and better for us, they said. Well, you can see a lot of crew members are smiling, likely because they know their job is safe next year. But of course, we should give the Jets a break, right? Because it's only their second year in the NHL. Hell no! Pretty much every WHA team that came into the league the year prior, well, they've had a lot more success, meaning they've earned their right to be the lowest of the low by simply being bad, the Jets that is. But of course, in order for this story to begin, we need context. Now it's time for our backstory. The Winnipeg Jets were established in 1972, the inaugural season of the Rebel Hockey League, the rival WHA. And they made one of the biggest moves in the history of the game, when Bobby Hull became hockey's $1 million man. Hull had already carved himself out a Hall of Fame career as one of the NHL's all-time greats by 1972, spending his whole career at that point with the Chicago Blackhawks. But this move shook up the hockey world's foundation as Hull signed with the WHA's Winnipeg Jets. He was always a box office attraction in the NHL, but season ticket sales for Winnipeg's inaugural season sold huge, and their games generally drew packed houses. Bobby captured the WHA's first ever MVP award, and the Jets made it all the way to the finals, only to lose, however, to the New England Whalers. The WHA was important to hockey culture despite its short lifespan. They were ahead of the curve when it came to European talent. More than the NHL was, as a matter of fact, as Swedish stars Ulf Nilsson and Anders Hedberg joined Hull, and the three put up monster numbers over a few years. In 3 out of the 4 seasons they played together, the trio each reached 100 points in a season, and in the 1 year they didn't, 2 of them still achieved it. They made it to 3 WHA finals in a row, winning 2 out of 3, but then Nilsson and Hedberg signed a lucrative deal with the New York Rangers, defecting to the NHL. But another Swedish sensation turned the heads of Winnipeg hockey fans. His name was Kent Nilsson. And with Bobby Hull suffering from injury issues, Kent, along with Morris Lukovic, Peter Sullivan, Terry Ruskowski, Willie Lindstrom, Barry Long, and veteran goalie Gary Smith made it all the way to the AVCO Cup Finals, the Jets' 4th straight appearance, and won their 3rd in 4 seasons. Yeah, the things looked good for the Jets going into the NHL, but luck wasn't on their side. Well, the WHA, of course, indeed folded, but the good news was that the Jets, along with the Edmonton Oilers, Quebec Nordiques, and New England Whalers, who were moving to Hartford, were entering the NHL, while the Cincinnati Stingers and Birmingham Bulls moved to the minor league CHL. The Jets were built by general manager Rudy Pilos, but he left the team in 1978, so taking over was former Montreal Canadiens fan favorite John Ferguson, affectionately known as Fergie. But since his retirement from on-ice action, he has kept busy. He was the assistant coach for Team Canada at the 1972 Summit Series, and was head coach and GM of the New York Rangers for 3 seasons before he got the job in Winnipeg. He was able to keep the Jets afloat, helped sign Kent Nilsson, and made a risk firing Larry Hillman at the end of the season, replacing him with Tom McVie, who ultimately led them to the AVCO Cup victory. But as the Jets were set to enter the NHL, Ferguson had to make it through this set of drafts on June 13, 1979. First was the WHA dispersal draft, where the 4 new NHL clubs were set to pick some players from the Stingers, Bulls, and the now completely defunct Indianapolis Racers, who ceased operations before the last WHA season could even end. The Jets fared okay, no worse than anyone else did in this case, as most picks in this part of the draft didn't really pan out for any of the 4 clubs. The Jets obtained Jamie Hislop, who never played a single game for them, Barry Legge, a defenseman and fan favorite from the Stingers, and will play for them in the season that we talked about, left winger Peter Marsh, a 43-goal scorer from the Stingers, I might add, you'll see him in this video, and Craig Norwich, a defenseman from the Cincinnati Stingers, so overall, not bad for Fergie. They were also allowed to protect 3 players. They retained defenseman Scott Campbell, who can provide enforcement, and Morris Lukovic, who had an outstanding season of 65 goals. 2 skaters they protected, and they also protected goaltenders Marcus Matson and Gary Smith. Not exactly a terrible move, but you have to wonder, of course, Why did they not protect their biggest star in Kent Nilsson? Well, like pretty much all the other 3 teams that were entering the league, they had little to no money. As a matter of fact, the Oilers, thanks to old Pockets Pocklington, were able to retain Gretzky because the reclamation draft was going to destroy the Jets. At first, it looked bad for the Oilers, even worse for them than it did for the Jets, whose defense was completely decimated and lost 14 players total and only got 2 back. The Whalers did really well, only losing 4 and getting 2 back. The same thing happened to the Nordiques. But as for the Jets, they'd lose 8, as indeed Kent Nilsson was reclaimed by the Flames. Terry Ruskowski would be another huge loss, as the Blackhawks picked him up. Also, Glenn Hicks went to the Red Wings. Barry Long would be another huge loss for the club, as he was one of their top defensemen and a great leader to boot, as he's off to Detroit. Also, Kim Claxton, who protected all the top forwards during his time with the Winnipeg Jets, was obtained by the Penguins. Paul McKinnon, another defenseman who had a good year with the Jets during their AFCO Cup run, was reclaimed by the Capitals. And Peter Marsh, who they just picked up in the dispersal draft, was taken by Montreal. And then Bobby Hull was taken back to the Chicago Blackhawks in somewhat of a shocker. However, thankfully, when the expansion draft itself actually took place, Peter Marsh was left unprotected by the Habs, and they took him back. And, in a move that puzzled some, but made sense to others, they took back Bobby Hull. Rumors to this was actually being a money thing, or a reward for loyalty, or the Jets wanting leadership, or all of the above. Allegedly, however, a conversation between he and Jets GM John Ferguson went like this. Hey Fergie, can I talk to you a minute? Sure, Bob. What can I do for you? Well, actually, it's Bobby. Bobby Hull. But anyway, hey, how's your son? Oh, what's his name again? John Jr.? Right. How is he? Oh, he's good. Lately, all he does in his room is sit at a desk and pretends to be general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Who on God's green earth would want that job? Yeah, I know, but who am I to shatter his dream? Anyway, how about your boy Brett? How is he? Who? Oh, Brett. Yeah, he's fine. But sadly, I don't have the heart to tell him that he's just not any good at hockey. I mean, he only had 6 goals in his last game. What's up with that? He'll never be as good or better than me. Anyway, Bobby Hull, what can I do for you? Well, I know the expansion draft is coming up, and I keep hearing that the Blackhawks are going to reclaim me. And, well, the thing is, a cheap human paraquat, Bill Wirtz, isn't willing to shell out the cash I need. And after everything I've done for that oaf, and, well, it'd be more financially feasible for me to stay in Winnipeg. So I was thinking maybe I could be one of your protected picks. Now, I gotta be honest with you. I need to protect younger players, and I need a defenseman, as it looks like I may lose a lot. And Morris has to be my top forward, and as I can't afford Kent, I still need a top guy. Fergie, I need you to do me a solid on this one. There's this thing called hair transplants. Wave of the future, and I've been looking into it. Plus, I made a lot of investments that went south. How so? Well, with my hair situation, Golden Jet shampoo and conditioner didn't really thrive, and Bobby's Bran Flakes went belly up because I was using third-rate imitation bran that actually works the opposite way of real bran and makes people constipated. I mean, come on. Do people really want to poop that much? Give me a break. Not to mention all the money I put into Brewers Retail hurt my bank account. Wait, Brewers Retail? You mean those beer stores in Ontario? I hear they're doing quite financially well. Plus, I didn't know you owned a store. No, I don't. I just spend a lot of money there every summer. Is finishing your career in Chicago so bad, though? I mean, you get to play alongside Stan one more time. Who? Stan, as in Stan Mikita. Mikita. Oh, yes, that's right, the guy who scored goals. That wasn't me. Oh, okay. Yeah. That's right, I guess. Plus, Bob Pulford hates me. He's now the GM. He's just bitter because I constantly kicked the Leafs' ass in the Stanley Cup. You faced the Leafs once in the Stanley Cup, and they won. Yeah, but I still played great. He's bitter about that, you see. I'm sorry, but I can't protect your rights. Hey, you owe me. Ever since that, you and that no-good son of a motherless goat Harry Sinden left me off Team Canada in 1972. And plus, thanks to my money situation, I can't send Brett to Bobby Orr's hockey camp. I had to send him to the Tim Hortons hockey camp instead. Tim Horton? He's been dead for 5 years. I know, it's run by his cousin, Randy Horton. He's going to teach them all of Tim's methods. Oh, that is ludicrous. Does this guy even have any playing experience himself? As a matter of fact, yes, he played 6 years of semi-pro hockey in Ecuador. My head hurts all of a sudden. Fergie, please, don't make me beg in the only suit I have that costs more than $200. I mean, wait, there's a chance they won't protect my rights. If they don't, could you please reobtain me? Alright, since you bring leadership and while you sell some tickets, we'll bring you back. But only if they don't protect your rights. And you have to promise not to sleep with my wife. I promise nothing. Okay, so that conversation likely didn't happen, but I still had fun with that, and I hope you did too. But moving on. So the 1979 NHL entry draft arrived, one of the greatest classes in NHL history. The WHA teams had the final 4 picks of each round. The Jets had the 19th pick of the first round out of 21 teams, so who'd they go with? Kevin Lowe, a young defenseman who is on the board, and considering the Jets' woes in the expansion draft, he'd be a good choice. But the Jets go with Jimmy Mann. Yeah, he's tough, and he had good scoring stats at the junior level. In 4 seasons with the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, he scored 82 goals, 124 assists for 206 points in 266 games, and amassed 749 penalty minutes. And was a first-team All-Star for the Q in the 1978-79 season. Which, hey, including great numbers, 35 goals, 47 assists for 82 points, and 260 penalty minutes, 65 games, an excellent season. And I guess the Jets' logic was that they'd have a winger to protect their star forwards, and it makes up for Claxton's absence when it comes to toughness. So in a way, it did make sense. But yeah, you can see a lot with the benefit of hindsight, and hindsight is that 2 future Hall of Famers were taken next. Michel Goulet to the Nordiques, and Kevin Lowe to the Oilers. But a tough guy who can score goals is a sure thing, right? Well, Stu Grimson scored 24 goals in his final year with the Regina Pats. That would be more than he would score in his entire NHL career. But Stu Grimson wasn't taken in the first round, was he? No, by the time he got to the NHL, his job wasn't to score goals anyway. But the Jets made a great second-round pick with Dave Christian, a member of the U.S. national team, and the Western Collegiate Hockey Association Universities of North Dakota. And he scored 30 goals and had 40 assists for 70 points in 78 games, with his final year being 22 goals, 24 assists for 46 points in just 40 games. A hard-working two-way specialist is a pretty good option for the Jets, and he'd go on to win an Olympic gold medal, notching 7 assists in 8 games for Team USA in the Miracle on Ice in Lake Placid. And they made a steal of a pick in round 5, as again being ahead of the curve with European players paid off. They took Thomas Steen, 103rd overall. However, he won't be eligible to play for the Jets until the 81-82 season. But either way, that was a very good pick. Capable two-way player who had good numbers in the Swedish league, but took home a silver and 2 bronzes at the World Junior Championships. It was named to the Media All-Star team in the 1979 championship. The Jets even made a steal of a deal in the last round of the draft. With the third to last pick in the draft, they took Tim Wanders, a defenseman set to play for the Canadian national team. But now here we are at the NHL level, and their first year in the NHL, well, it sucked. They were 20, 49, and 11, a mere 51 points. But Bill, they're an expansion team. Yes, well, so are the Nordiques, and despite missing the playoffs, they still finished 10 points ahead of the Jets. Also, the Whalers slipped into the playoffs, as did the Oilers at the very final spot. But Bill, they had Wayne Gretzky and all that stacked talent around him. Well, by stacked talent, you mean Blair McDonald, who, to be fair, was a very good player in his first year at the NHL. And if stacked, you mean Mark Messier, who was not a top 4 by any means yet at that point. Or if you mean Curry, Anderson, or Coffey, they weren't there yet. Moving on. Some Jets players played pretty decently, as Lukowich, to no surprise, was their leading scorer with 77 points. Peter Sullivan had 24 goals, but was an abysmal minus 45. Ron Wilson and Willie Lindstrom did okay. Peter Marsh was a huge disappointment and suffered injury issues. However, Dave Christian reported to the club after the Olympics, played 15 games, and notched a highly impressive 18 points. As for the defense, team captain Lars-Erik Sjoberg and Scott Campbell combined for a minus 74. The former would not be back on the team the following year. First round pick Jimmy Mann racked up a huge 287 penalty minutes and 8 points in 72 games and a minus 20, which was probably his best stat. Oh, and as for Bobby Hull, he only played 18 games. He was okay with 10 points, but shipped to Hartford and retired at the end of the year. Good thing the Jets wasted an expansion draft pick on him. Hope that hair transplant stuff works out for him, though. In goals scored, the Jets were dead last, 214. In goals against, they allowed the 19th most of the 21 teams. The only teams worse than them in that regard were Toronto and Edmonton, but they had goal scorers and made the playoffs. The power play, 16th, not great, but not overly awful, so they can build on that, as they even had a better extra man unit than the first place overall Flyers, believe it or not. And their penalty kill was 13th, surprisingly somewhat decent, and Dave Christian can certainly add to that with this team full-time, and was the only other saving grace was that the NHL's perennial punchline, the Colorado Rockies, were worse than them. It also means that Jets get the second overall pick in the draft. And that's where our story truly begins. To Fergie's credit, however, he got things moving about 2 weeks before the draft, sending the cash that was likely Bobby Hull's future beer store investment to the Quebec Nordiques for defenseman Barry Legge. who the Jets had picked up in the expansion draft, but then traded to Quebec to get Barry Melrose, who racked up a huge -41. Yeah, cool move there, Fergie. Anyway, whatever. Leahy was a pretty good overall defenseman for the Cincinnati Stingers in the WHA. He played 5 seasons in the WHA overall and had 106 points in 345 games, 341 penalty minutes, and played a traditional style and wasn't afraid to get tough. He did play 31 games for the Nordiques and notched 3 assists and was a +2, but suffered injury issues and also played 5 games for the Syracuse Firebirds of the AHL. Then came draft day on June 11, 1980, and Jets fans were waiting with bated breath. Who is going to be picked? And while the draft wasn't televised for another 4 years, the headlines were surrounding 2 men hyped as generational talents. Doug Wickenheiser of the Regina Pats of the WHL, and Denis Savard of the Montreal Juniors of the Quebec League. And the mystery was, who would Montreal take? As they traded years ago to get this top pick, a lot of people's money was on Savard, and perhaps the Jets would obtain the Western Canadian, who would likely be a hit with Jets fans. But Savard would also be great as well. The Jets need a franchise center to build their team around. But this was also the year of the defensemen, as a total of 9 were taken in the first round, and the Jets could use some help there as well. Montreal, to the shock of many, took Doug Wickenheiser. Well, to be fair, the Jets dodged a bullet there. But Savard is a sure thing. But the Jets went with one of the many great available defensemen in this draft, Dave Babich. And this one shocked quite a few as well. No disrespect to Dave, who did have a pretty good career. When Larry Murphy and Paul Coffey are selected after you, years later, people look back and wonder, But on paper, Babich was the choice to go with if you're looking at the draft at the time. If you're going to go with the defenseman, he could hopefully boost the Jets' poor power play, as he had a huge offensive upside, as during his 3 seasons with the Portland Winterhawks, he had 165 points, and 122 of them were assists. And he was a superb setup man overall, which the Jets could use on their defense. In his final year with the club, he notched 82 points and was the first-team All-Star in the Western Hockey League. While some were left scratching their heads as to why they didn't take Savard, this was still seen as a good pick by others. So here's the overall list of Jets picks in the 1980 draft. In the second round, they took another defenseman and with even more penalty minutes in Mo Mantha Jr. Mo was decent, but Craig Muni, who the Oilers drafted soon after, would have been the better pick. After taking center Murray Eves in the third round, they took Guy Fournier in the 4th round, and 4 picks later, Yari Curry was taken by Edmonton. And later in the round, Bernie Nichols was taken by LA. They took someone Babich is very familiar with Glenn Auster in the 5th round, and they took a needed goaltending prospect of Ron Lustel in the 6th round. We'll be hearing about him later. But Andy Moog at that point was still on the board, and they had 2 picks in the 7th round, taking Brian Mullen, who was a bit of a steal, and Michael Lurin. Overall, these draft picks played a combined 999 games for the Jets, just 1 game short of 1,000. Babich, Mantha, and Mullen, however, played a combined 938 of those. Kind of middle ground overall, I'd say. The Jets, however, made another trade as they got rid of their best defenseman in Craig Norwich in exchange for Rick Bowness? Right winger Rick Bowness? Really? The man we came later to know as Rick Winless Bowness? The very same indeed. Okay, to be fair, Bowness in his coaching career got a raw deal very early on and was with many teams that he coached, and like the expansion Senators or the Islanders, was working for Mike Milbury as a fate I wouldn't even wish on my ex-girlfriend. Bowness had pro experience of 128 games between the Flames, Red Wings, and Blues. He had 10 goals, 20 assists for 30 points, and a pretty bad -41. But I'm sure Fergie felt that it was okay, considering that stat was pretty much many of his players in 1 year. But the thing is, his time in the CHL was the complete opposite. He was outstanding in the minor leagues. The Tulsa Oilers and Salt Lake Golden Eagles. He had 90 goals, 127 assists for 217 points in 222 games, and helped lead the Golden Eagles to the CHL's Adams Cup championship the prior season. So I guess that's where they saw the upside of Bowness. But is it really worth your best defenseman? Well, to be fair, Norwich's career didn't really pan out after this, so maybe it wasn't such a terrible trade after all. The Jets made another deal, however, a couple weeks before the season was set to start. On September 26th, they offered up future considerations, which later ended up being a 1982 second-round draft pick to the Montreal Canadiens to obtain little-used forward Norm Dupont, who was once a star in the Junior Hockey League in Quebec, but injuries, inconsistencies, and being a healthy scratch many times didn't make him all that valuable to the Habs, who were already pretty stacked. Despite looking like he was developing well in Nova Scotia, it didn't pan out, as his rookie season he had a goal and 3 helpers for 4 points in those 35 games, and was a pretty good +2. During his 2 seasons with the AHL's Nova Scotia Voyagers, however, he had 58 goals, 60 assists for 118 points in 129 games. Very good numbers. Fergie wasn't done yet. He had one more deal to make just 2 days before the season was set to start. They sent more of Bobby Orr's hair portion money to the Quebec Nordiques for Danny Geoffrion, indeed the son of Hall of Famer Bernie Boom Boom Geoffrion. And despite being taken 8th overall by the Habs in 1978, he went to the WHA to play for the Quebec Nordiques. But his rights were taken by Montreal, and he was a bust. 6 assists in 32 games and a +1. And as I mentioned, he was a great junior hockey player. 5 seasons with the Cornwall Royals of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. 288 games. He had 188 goals, 248 assists for a whopping 436 points, and he was still only 23 years old. And could still be something could be salvaged here. But I mean, look at this bunch. I mean, I'm sure there's talent here. Most teams have talented players, no matter how bad they might be. But it's all about getting the right group together. But it looks at this team, it's pretty clear who their owner is. Obviously, Rachel Phelps' goal is building a team so bad that she can move them to Miami. Okay, no, clearly she's not the owner, but come on! I can picture the first act of this being the major league with a group of misfits like this. Actually, the owner is Barry Schenkenrow, a Winnipeg lawyer who would actually head up an ownership group that took over the Jets. And to be fair, he was really passionate about pro hockey in Winnipeg and wasn't evil by any means, despite some questionable decisions. But he made his mistakes, but what owner hasn't? But here we go, led by Coach Tom McVie, who was let go last season with 3 games to go, even though the Jets were going to miss the playoffs anyway, is back leading this bunch. You have team captain Morris Lukowich. You have Dave Christian about to play his first full season. New acquisitions Norm Dupont, Danny Geoffrion, and Rick Bowness. Also some familiar faces, Ron Wilson, Willie Lindstrom, and Peter Sullivan. Also Jimmy Mann, their top prospect. A youngster by the name of Doug Schmale, who was left undrafted, will be ready for opening day. Chris Mannery, who spent last season with 3 teams, including the Jets. Veteran center Jude Druin, who once had a 40-goal season for the Islanders. And also Peter Marsh. You have on defense Don Spring, Barry Melrose, Al Cameron, Scott Campbell, and rookie Mo Mantha Jr., and second overall pick Dave Babich. Their main goaltender is still Marcus Matson. Wait, I'm actually really starting to think Rachel Phelps is the real owner of this team. She is part of this ownership group. Anyway, now get ready for October 10th, 1980. Opening nights. And for opening night, the Jets make a trip to take on a team not all that much better on paper than they are, the Washington Capitals. They do bolster quite a bit of talent, including forwards Dennis Merrick, the speedy Mike Gartner, and Ryan Walter, and their seasoned veteran all-star Sean Pronovo, as well as former Leafs star goalie Mike Palmatier. Their defense, however, looked worse than the Jets in many ways, and this would be a good way for the Jets to start the season. But alas, that was not the case. Matson faced 34 shots, stopping 30, and the Capitals were all over their goalie, while the Jets didn't pressure Palmatier at all. The Caps led 4-0, but Babich, late in the third period, ended Palmatier's shutout bid with the first career goal in his first game. The Caps' big guns, however, all came out to play on this one. Not a great start, but it could be worse, right? Well, next up, they had another road game, this one against the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Pens were a very middle-of-the-road team, led by star forward Rick Kehoe and defenseman Randy Carlisle. Rookie Lindsay Middlebrook gets to start in net for the Jets, while Geoffrion, Legge, and Lindstrom suit up for them finally. But man sits this one out, thank goodness. The Jet tied the game on Dave Christian's first goal of the year, 1-1, but the Pens took a commanding 4-1 lead in the second. The Jets made a huge comeback bid, but it fell short, despite an amazing 3-point night from Dave Christian. They dropped this one 5-4, but looked a little more determined in this outing, but their defense is very weak, as once again, 36 shots were put against them, giving Middlebrook a rough night in his first game, as Oris Kinderchuk of the Pens lit him up with a 4-point night. But it's time for the home opener, a great way for the Jets to turn things around as they face the Chicago Blackhawks, who last season looked to be on a resurgence and have started this season pretty hot with their rookie Denny Savard, and defenseman Doug Wilson as Murray Bannerman gets the start and goal for them this game. A hungry crowd at the Winnipeg Arena is ready for some hockey. And wow, look at this, the Jets easily decimate the heavily favored Hawks 6-2, a huge hat trick and 4-point night for Lukowich. His first NHL hat trick as he had 6 in the WHA. Also good games from Mann, yeah, believe it or not, Campbell, Mannery, Spring, and Sullivan. And Matson was a beast in net. 40 saves on 42 shots. Hey, maybe this Jets team isn't so bad after all. And maybe they'll surprise us all. Maybe they have enough heart and iron will to make it. Well, I mean, hey, they didn't lose to Quebec, but they did collapse. Despite solid outings from Marsh and Dupont with 51 seconds to go, the Nords, trailing 4-2 to the Jets, scored a goal and then tied it with 7 seconds to play. A tie that still gets them a point, but it must have felt like they lost. But hey, this Jets team has some fire. This Jets team is determined. This Jets team is not winning. First, a trip to Buffalo and a 7-4 loss, despite 3 assists from Babich. Danny Garrett's hat trick was the difference maker for the Sabres in that one. Then a trip to Minnesota to face a rising Stars club. Despite Middlebrook making 35 saves, he still let in 4 goals, as this Jets defense is truly something to behold in terms of train wreck value. But then came a wild shootout with a struggling Bruins squad. The Jets led 4-3 early in the second, but trailed 6-4 going into the third. But the Jets took a 7-6 lead, but a Boston goal with 3:44 to play, again cost the Jets an actual win and had to settle for a 7-7 tie. A monster game, however, from Ron Wilson. 2 goals, 2 assists for 4 points, and Jeffrey on had 3 points. Then it was a rematch with Chicago, and this time it was quite the opposite. The Hawks win 8-4. Middlebrook had more shots come his way than a California socialite on her birthday, as he had to stop 41 of 49 shots as Reg Kerr's hat trick and former Jet Terry Ruskowski notched 3 assists in a game where head coach Tom McVie left to get a hot pretzel. As DuPont, Marsh, and Wilson looked like they needed a GPS to find opposing players on the puck, reports say they forgot where the bench was. I think it had uniforms similar to ours on it. Then a scary Halloween for the Jets as they return home to face Pittsburgh. But hey, the Jets lead 5-3 to end the second period, and hey, they blow it, giving up 3 power play goals with a penalty kill unit that couldn't kill a paralyzed centipede. They lose 6-5 as Middlebrook and Matson were awful in net. What a way to end the month. A 6-game winless streak. But I mean, well, it has to end sometime. I mean, come on. Well, and Fergie made another deal. Seeing as this defense looked more bewildered than Josh Hartnett when he tries to act, they sent some more of that Jets money to the Detroit Red Wings for Barry Long, the former Jets All-Star from the WHA, who had spent his entire season with Detroit last year. And in 210 career NHL games, he has 54 points and is a -9. But he had much better times in the WHA with Edmonton and then with Winnipeg. In 387 games, he had 51 goals, 171 assists for 222 points, but was also a -41, mainly attributed to some bad years with a very bad Edmonton team. But he was a second-team All-Star twice and was the Jets team captain for back-to-back Avco Cup wins in 78 and 79. This actually wasn't a bad move for the Jets, despite a rough year with the dreadful Detroit Red Wings with 17 assists and a -28, but did play all 80 games the year prior. I still note that, however, they traded their best defenseman for Rick Bowness, who's still in the minors. Okay, so the playoff format is literally the top 16 teams in the entire league make it. No divisional rules quite yet. But the Jets, well, I mean, it's too early to tell, but 1-6-2 is hardly anything to write home about. But they're only 3 points out of a playoff spot, and that punk kid Gretzky ain't doing much better. There's still hope. I mean, this this winless streak they're on, I should say, can't last forever, right? Right? Oh, dear. It's no surprise seeing Captain Morris Liquid is leading the team in scoring with 8 goals and 6 assists for 14 points in just 9 games, including 2 shorthanders, meaning he's the only one hustling on the penalty kill. He's also a good +3. Dave Christian is showing early candidacy for the Calder Trophy with 11 points, which includes a team-leading 9 assists, and works very well on the power play. Ron Wilson played some big outings, had 6 goals and 4 assists for 10 points, and was tied with Peter Marsh, seemingly finding his groove again. Marsh, however, was a team worst -7. Danny Jeffrey and Norm DuPont so far seem to be pretty good additions to the club, while Willie Lindstrom is battling injuries. Jimmy Mann still isn't living up to his hype by any means. Peter Sullivan is dead in the water, but young Doug Smale is showing some hunger. As a complete core, this Jets defense really makes you hang your head. But Dave Babich is living up to the hype so far with 7 points, leading all defensemen in scoring and showing great hustle. But the best blue liner on the Jets all month was Don Spring. He led the team with a +5 and was tremendous in his own zone and could begin very successful rushes. Scott Campbell played very well in a few games, but the rest of the core, the less said the better. Barry Melrose was so bad that it makes his career as an analyst sound like Dick Irvin's. Al Cameron was very ineffective more often than not, and Momantha was hit or miss. But can Barry Long's return change things? And wow, check out this tandem. I mean, Marcus Matson at least has a win, but his 4.83 goals against averages, .850 save percentage aren't even passable by 1980s standards. But look at Middlebrook, 0-4-1, a massive goals against average of 5.68. That's teetering close to 6. That would make Greg Millen wince. Oh, his .843 save percentage is just oh god, just 0.007 less than Matson's, meaning he needs that much to be considered very bad. To be fair, these guys were bombarded with many shots to add better context, but there have been many weak goals let in weak games. But when you're facing 40 shots often and your defense isn't helping, chances are you're going to suck. Two-sided coin of this one, I'm afraid. To start November, the Jets once again have a game in hand, and once again they blow it. They had a 4-2 lead against the Capitals with just a minute and a half to play, and they let it slip. They had to settle for a draw, as Norm Dupont had a career game, however, with a hat trick, and was named the first star of the game, but a bittersweet tie is what happened in the end. And it was much of the same against Calgary in a game that saw Barry Long suit up and got a tremendous returning ovation from the Jets faithful. Lukowich and Christian both had amazing three-point outings, while Little Boom Boom had 2 goals, but again, their clutch goaltending is non-existent. They led 5-2 in the third and had to settle for a 5-5 tie. Then came a matchup against the youngest team in the NHL. The Edmonton Oilers led, of course, by young sensation Wayne Gretzky, who at 19 had already achieved more than some have in their whole career. The Jets knew to win they'd have to hold Gretzky at bay, and well, the good news is they did just that. They held him to 1 assist. The bad news is the Oilers still took the game 4-2, causing collective groans. Middlebrook was proven to be even less reliable, and the hockey media was starting to turn the Jets into a punchline. And then after that, they suffered their 10th straight game without a win, a 7-4 thumping at the hand of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which prompted Winnipeg reporters to say, are you sure there aren't any wars or natural disasters we can cover instead? I'll go on location, please. Just anything but this. Well, good news to that reporter is that he does not have to travel with the team, as the Jets indeed travel to Quebec City and face the one team that was as bad as they are, the Nordiques. And Matson got his first start in a while. However, this bad Nordiques team still had 2 very talented Czechoslovakian brothers whose surname was Stasny. And they helped dominate the Jets 5-1, but Matson had a very valid reason for the loss when talking to reporters after the game. It's not my fault. I can't tell which brother is which. But when a reporter asked, what about the 3 goals you let in that they weren't even in on? To which Matson replied, mind you, any record of that interview actually happening is purely speculation, but all I know is Matson was sent down to CHL's Tulsa Oilers after the loss. Well, at least they're heading to Boston to face a struggling Bruins squad, and at least, hey, Rick Bowness is going to suit up for this game. Woohoo! And at least they have a 5-3 lead in the third period, and of course they didn't lose, but yet again they didn't win and had to settle for another tie, which, well, yeah, pretty much might as well be a win these days for the Jets, as goalie Pierre Hamel gets called up from Tulsa. His 4.14 goals against average, I guess, was just too good for Tom McVie to pass up. And Hamel did play for the team last season, and he stops 25 out of 30 shots. Yeah, he's going to fit in with this team real well. Christian had a monster 4-point night, while Jeffrey Allen played well, and Mannery had a career night with 2 goals. It wasn't enough, but this has to be a sign. The losing has to end, right? Well, yeah, it needs to end, but that doesn't mean it necessarily does. Count them up. 5 more straight losses for the Jets. First hosting Montreal, where they drop a 5-1 loss. Hamel faces 39 shots, stops 34, but Jets fans got really into this game by chanting "Gee" every time LaFleur touched the puck. Nice to see Jets fans have finally found a player they can latch on to. And then it's off to Vancouver, where the Canucks easily take them 6-1, as Barry Long's string of terrible games comes to an end by scoring a lone goal and was only a mere -2. Then it was off to LA, where Hamel got a nice tan while out there, considering how often the red light was going off behind him, as the Jets lost 7-2 to the Triple Crown line of Dion, Taylor, and Simmer and the Kings. Larry Murphy, who the Jets could have picked in the first round of the draft, had 3 assists. But hey, they had a much better night and a much better fight at home against the Buffalo Sabres, where they only lost by 2 goals in a 4-2 thriller against the Sabres. Though in a road game, the Jets put up a bit more of a spirited effort against the Flyers, who were one of the NHL's best teams, and they suffered a 3-1 loss. But 5 straight losses, the winless streak has now hit 17. It has to get easier from here, right? Nope. A road game against the defending Stanley Cup champion New York Islanders is next in line. After a shaky start, they're looking like themselves. Oh boy, yes, because Mike Bossy enters this game with 23 goals in 22 games, and considering the Jets have only scored 7 goals in the last 5 games, that's not looking good. But the Jets really took it to Islander star goalie Billy Smith, and Pierre Hamel, despite letting in 4 goals, played a really good game, making some highlight reel saves, which stunned the Island crowd, thinking they were going to get an easy win here. It was tied 4-4 after 2 periods, and the Isles almost put it away many times, but the Jets managed to tie the game. I'm not even being the least bit snarky or sarcastic, at least not this time. This was the best the Jets have looked since their only win so far this season. Hamel was actually named one of the game's 3 stars, and the fact that they kept up with the dominant Islanders was something that they can maybe build on. Give them momentum as their next game is in Hartford against a struggling Whalers team. And what do you know? The Jets score another 4-goal game and the Whalers score 8. Yep, it's a loss. And head coach Tom McVie spotted some of his players having a laugh, and he yelled, "Oh, you think it's funny? You think losing is funny?" To which Barry Melrose replied, "Well, not at first, but once you get the hang of it." And again, this is just purely speculation this happened. And come on, the Jets situation can only be laughed at like great hockey movies at this point. The Jets walked into the Winnipeg arena and breathed in and said, home sweet hell, as they prepared to face the St. Louis Blues, who were doing very well thanks in large part to their red-hot goaltender Mike Liut. And while Hamel played good here, the big shock was the Jets' defense actually played crap, I can't say it. Take a breath. They played great, containing Blues star forwards such as Bernie Federko, giving Hamel much-needed relief, as the Grinders were also doing their thing. The Jets bombarded Liut, but the goalie was just too good in net, and if it was anyone else in net, the Jets actually might have gotten a win here. But because they cohesively played so well together, and like they did in the Island, it was actually a pretty decent outing. So now, once again, they have a chance to capitalize on a night where they didn't suck all that much, and build on it. But no, the Flames scorched them 4-1. And to add for their insult, Kent Nilsson, the former Jets WHA star, seems to play well against his former team whenever they meet, definitely rubbing paprika in the wounds of the Jets and their fans. Barry Legge had been called up from Tulsa to hopefully strengthen their defense, and it didn't work. Yep. They didn't win a game all damn month. And currently, they're riding a 21-game winless streak and counting. Good God, this Jets team isn't worth the Charmin Ultra they wipe their asses with. Actually, yeah, they need more cash to get better players, so GM John Ferguson has told them that ownership is only letting them use regular Charmin toilet paper, but, it's still 2-ply. Either way, of course, they're dead last at this point, 1-16-7. But oddly enough, thanks to this playoff format, they're only 8 points out. And despite this team being, how they are, Dave Christian is still making a strong case for the Calder Trophy candidacy as Rookie of the Year. His 16 points were by far the best in the Jets, as he was the only player to average a point a game, and he shows tremendous hustle and grind. Danny Jeffrion had a pretty good month with the team leading 6 goals and was tied for second with Morris Lukowich for 10 points. The forwards as a whole were abysmal this month, mind you, so was the whole team, as the Jets were averaging 4 goals a game to begin the season despite their bad start, and the other averaging 2.5. See, their solution was to find a better goaltender and strengthen their defense, but now everything's a mess. Peter Marsh, who had 10 points in 9 games in October, had 3 points all month, and is pretty much done on the peg. Lindstrom, at least, was impactful in some ways, but inconsistent. Same with Wilson, while Chris Mannery was the only real surprise of the month in a positive way. The rest of this forward core is completely dead in the water. Oh, this poor defense. While the return of Barry Long to Winnipeg was impactful on the score sheet in a lot of ways, as he did lead all defensemen in scoring this month with 8 points, otherwise wasn't able to be as good as he was in the WHA. But the 2 best defensemen were the 2 who didn't play the whole month. Mo Mantha missed 6 games due to injury issues, which is going to put him out of action going into December, which makes things worse for the Jets. As he and, of course, tough guy Scott Campbell, who only played 5 games, were team best -1. Campbell's health issues, however, included chronic asthma and were exacerbated by the climate in Winnipeg. He would never play for the Jets again after this month. As a matter of fact, he only played 3 more games in the NHL, but did have a successful career in the harness racing business. Babbage was still hungry and determined out there, but he got rocked constantly, and his poor kid was not in a good situation. Spring played decently in some games, I guess, but not near as well as he did in October, whereas Melrose and Cameron, they're still on the roster, so there's that. And the goaltenders. Pierre Hamel, despite not obtaining a win with his less than stellar 0-6-3 record, with the numbers he obtained this month, blew Matheson and Middlebrook out of the water. His .870 save percentage is better than it has any right to be, as the other 2 were .841, and Middlebrook played multiple games, which is, is inexcusable, but even Matheson's .828, even for 1 game, that's wretched. Hamel's 4.38 goals against average, again, not great, but again, better than anything these 2 can muster up. As at this point, you have to go with him as your top goalie. And while you think the other 2 are decent enough as backups, they're not. They need someone else in that role. Matheson, as I said earlier, is in the minor league CHL Tulsa Oilers program. The Jets began the month of December with a couple trades, as Ferguson could no longer just sit around with his thumb up his ass, and indeed got rid of Peter Marsh, sending him to Chicago in exchange for young forwards Tim Trimper and Doug Lucier. Well, Trimper was a star in the juniors with the Peterborough Petes, winning back-to-back OHL championships and getting himself a Memorial Cup ring. He had 193 points total in 187 games, including a 62-goal season in his final year where he won the Memorial Cup, and to date the franchise's only Memorial Cup win, as a matter of fact. He also had 31 playoff points that year for their second straight championship, and he was drafted by the Hawks in 1979, but has only seen 30 games of action, and that was in the 1979-80 season, where he had decent numbers with 6 goals and 13 assists for 19 points in those 30 games, but he was thriving in the minors with 72 points in 62 games over the last 2 seasons with the New Brunswick Hawks, including 15 points in 19 games this season. Lucier was another left winger, and he dropped the gloves more than tallies. Yes, that's what the Jets need, more guys in the penalty box. But in the WHL, he jumped back and forth between the Calgary Centennials, Edmonton Oil Kings, and Portland Winterhawks, and had a great career in the juniors. He had a huge 362 points in just 208 games, had 1,337 penalty minutes. He has 69 NHL games under his belt, 14 points, and is a -10. Much like teammate Tremper, he has done well in the minor leagues with 55 points in 53 games. This season in 14 games with the Hawks, however, he is pointless and a -2. The very next day, Fergie reached in that petty cash jar and sent some dollars the way of Harold Ballard in Toronto, a man who would sell his mother for a watered-down Maple Leaf Gardens fountain drink, and in return got a defenseman, Richard Mulhern. Obviously, anything to help the Jets' defense is welcome. Mulhern is in his 5th NHL season at this point, has played 284 games, and is a traditional stay-at-home defenseman, originally touted as a top prospect from the Atlanta Flames. He was straight to LA, but has had trouble finding his footing ever since. He's also suffering from back issues. He has spent this season in the minors, but has 18 points in 20 games. Mulhern and Tripper will suit up for the Jets in their first game of the month. And December starts pretty much as good as you'd think, starting with a 4-3 loss to New York Rangers, despite a 39-save game from Hamel and 3 assists from Babbage. Lucier makes his Jets debut the next game against the Flames. It makes no difference, as the Jets lose 3-1. Lindsay Middlebrook is sent down to the minors, and Matson, who actually looked pretty good in Tulsa, is brought back to the roster, but it makes little to no difference in a 5-2 loss to Mike Liut and the powerful St. Louis Blues. Mulhern, however, played well in his first couple of games as a Jet. And then it was an 8-5 loss to Mark Howe and the Whalers. Babbage and Wilson had 2 points each. Hamel played his worst game yet in net. And the Jets now sit at 1-20-7, now winless in 24 games. Currently on a 5-game losing skid, and Fergie finally takes action. Tom McVie is done as head coach, a farewell that no doubt many saw coming at this point, and in a very emotional press conference he stated the following. "I'd like to say this was the ride of my life and I'll never forget it. I'd also like to say I once spent a night with Elizabeth Taylor, but we know none of these things are true. Good riddance, Fergie. I'm going back to BC, popping open a Labatt 50 and enjoying some Beachcombers marathon." Okay, well that wasn't exactly what he said, but who would blame him if he did? McVie, however, still went on to have a great career behind the scenes in hockey. He would work nearly a decade for the Devils organization, with a couple of head coaching tenures, but mainly as a coach for their farm team to help develop players, and then over 25 years, worked for the Boston Bruins as one of their top scouts before retiring in 2020 at 85 years old, and hey, got himself a nice little Stanley Cup ring for his troubles. Replacing him, however, was the man who took over for McVie last season, Bill Sutherland, and after being hired for the job again, Sutherland stated, "Good grief. Oh, come on, that's probably at least what he had to be thinking." Also, the team acquired a veteran defenseman, Tom Bladden, who was a fan favorite in Philadelphia for years, got himself a couple Stanley Cups, and has 265 points in 598 games, but is more known for his traditional style. But he also does have some offensive input, obviously, and has a booming shot. He held the NHL record at the time as the first defenseman to record 8 points in a game, and was an NHL record plus 10 in that very game on December 11, 1977. At this point, he was a career plus 143, but since a trade sent him to Pittsburgh, he hasn't quite been the same. After 2 seasons there, he was acquired by Edmonton this season, but played only 1 game, and it wasn't a very good one. But he has experience, can still offer a lot to any given team. But hey, you never know. Sutherland, like many other coaches, can breathe life into a faltering club. Or they could lose 5 more games, bringing their current losing streak to 10, and then win the streak to a whopping 30 games. And now some of the opposing teams couldn't help but say something. After the Jets lost 4-3 to the Minnesota North Stars, despite a 2-goal game from DuPont, Bobby Smith of the Stars said, "Yeah, perhaps Fergie should come out of retirement and suit up again. I fear him more than any of these guys." Well, to be fair, the Jets played pretty well despite the loss, and would go on to do so again against the defending champion Islanders after Lukowicz had a huge 2 goals and a helper for 3-point night, while Jeffrey on himself had 2 goals. But after the game, Brian Trottier said, "Oh, if they even dreamed they were going to beat us, they need to wake up and apologize for even doing that." The next game, the Jets were throttled by the Islanders, this time on the road. Bladden was terrible with a -3, and then Trottier then said, "Apology accepted." And then it was off to the Big Apple, where the Rangers bit into the Jets by a score of 8-2, welcoming Middlebrook back to the main roster, bombarding him with 49 shots. Phil Esposito was then quoted as saying, "Damn refs, should have been 9-2. And another 5-2 loss to the Blues, and Bernie Federico was quoted as saying, "All I could think the entire game we were out there was if I remember to tape 3's company." 30 games without a win. That's only 10 less than half a damn season, and is still an NHL record to this day. Yes, that's worse than the 76 Capitals or 76 Scouts. They're worse than the 1990 Nordiques, who we covered on this channel, the 1944 Rangers, the 62 Bruins, the 77 Wings, the 93 Sens, the 93 Sharks. Yeah, congratulations, boys. And now the Jets return back home for a battle with another team that isn't exactly a winner, the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies in their 6 prior seasons, which included 2 as the Kansas City Scouts, have only reached 20 wins once in their history. And while they're still not very good this year, they have 11 wins so far this season. They might as well be the Islanders compared to the Jets. And they did have a superstar all-star right winger in Lanny McDonald leading them, as well as top defenseman, first overall pick Rob Ramage from 1979. The game saw a scoreless first period, and the Jets, however, took a commanding 3-0 lead. Power play goal by Babbage. Lucier gets a goal 1:13 later. Then a few minutes, Doug Smale scored a shorthander. Is this really happening? Are the Jets really about to break the streak of patheticness? Or will Ramage and DeBlois score 11 seconds apart to end the period? But it's okay. The Jets still lead 3-2 after 2, and Trimper scores early in the third. 4-2. The arena is buzzing. The fans are joyful, and the Rockies score 2 more goals, and the game is tied. There's just no hope for this club at all, is there? Well, time is winding down, I guess. Again, hope for another tie. The Jets, however, are on a power play later on. Time is winding down. This is just sad. Wait. DuPont? To Anders Steen? To Willie Lidstrom! He scores! He scores! 1:50 to play! The Jets lead by a goal. The Winnipeg Arena is the loudest they've been all year. The clock ticks down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1! Yes! It has happened at last! The Jets hoist their 6 to symbolize the closest things to a Stanley Cup glory they'll see this year! Pierre Hamel pinches himself because he thinks he's dreaming! Babies being thrown in the air! Grown men crying tears of joy! A celebratory riot in the streets! A drunken fan parade marches all the way to Winnipeg Stadium! John Ferguson announced the raising of the banner, stating second win of the season! Okay, I'm definitely exaggerating. But this was a great game for the Jets. The winless streak is indeed over. And Doug Smale has a breakout game with 3 points. Lucier has a career night with 3 points himself. Way to go, boys! This is it! Things are going to change! They're going to start turning around! The Winnipeg Jets at last will! Going to 3-game losing streak to end the month. First, a 5-3 loss to the Stars at home, where Mantha had 2 assists. Next up, the Jets battle a team that really isn't all that much better than them, the Detroit Red Wings, who are now nicknamed the Dead Things. And they got a narrow 4-3 win over the Jets. Lukowich gets 2 goals as he's been kind of playing somewhat poorly. While Vladden gets 2 assists as he's been playing okay the last few games. But then he played very brutally in a 5-3 loss to the Capitals as his 10-game tryout was halted at 9 and was released by the team. Lukowich and Christian each had a goal and a helper in the loss. Well, not exactly any better than last month, minus the fact that they got 1 win, but their 5 ties last month actually got them 5 points over the 2 they had this month. But the win had a lot of people talking, and the coaching change to Sutherland seemed to be motivating the team just a little bit more. And after the win, they looked very competitive in the final 3 games of the month. Be that as it may, they are still a mess, they are still in dead last in the league, and 19 games out of a playoff spot. Dave Babbage is evolving as a presence on the ice when it comes to putting up points, and led the team in scoring all month with 11 points despite being a team worst minus 17, as the rookie defenseman is really taking a beating but still striving forward. Morris Lukowich, despite some very rough game finishes with 10 points and a team leading 6 goals. DuPont, Jeffrey, and Christian each finished with 9 points, meaning it's the same people producing consistently for the Jets. It's the others that are the problem. Lindstrom was a hero for scoring that game-winning goal that broke the 30-game winless streak, but he's otherwise been nowhere. And Anders Steen, who looked like he might make an impact, is barely making a whimper. The big surprise, however, is rookie Doug Smale, showing a lot of hunger in the games he is playing. Tripper and Lucier have proven to be pretty good in some games, so it wasn't a terrible trade for the Jets. Ron Wilson has also been somewhat steady. Dave Babbage, of course, led all defensemen in scoring all month, but the best defenseman, no doubt, was Richard Mulhern, who did miss 6 games, but proved to be a steal for the Jets after being obtained from Toronto. He showed some presence and led the team with an even 0 at plus-minus, but his injuries are still cause for concern. Speaking of injuries, Mo Mantha missed a lot of games, but he looked sharp in what little he played this month. The Tom Bladden experiment didn't work. He only played 9 games. It was a minus 10 before being released. He actually ended up in Detroit, where he only played the last 2 pro games of his career, but won himself a championship that season in the AHL, winning the Calder Cup with the Adirondack Red Wings before retiring from hockey. Barry Long is proving to be a pylon out there, while Don Spring actually had some really good games, and Barry Melrose is more or less done in Winnipeg. Thank God. Pierre Hamel can at least say he got the Jets their only win of the month in their first in 30 games, but not much else he can really say after putting up some surprising numbers last month. He became the starter. He is an abysmal 4.80 goals against average, a horrendous 8.57 save percentage. Middlebrook was scored on 8 times and pretty much made sure his ticket was round trip to the minors at this point. Matson will return as a backup, was a surprising goals against average at 3.73, but his save percentage is still just very sad. And oh boy, looks like it will not be a happy new year for the Jets, as on January 2nd, 1981, they host the second best team in the entire league at that point, the Philadelphia Flyers, who last year not only made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, but also set an NHL record for the longest unbeaten streak. So the polar opposite 180 of the Jets. And what a roster this was, led by head coach Pat Quinn. He, of course, had the greats in their Stanley Cup days, such as Bobby Clarke, Bill Barber, Rick McLeish, and Reggie Leach, who were still producing at high levels. But he also had some new breed in young forwards, such as Brian Propp, Tim Kerr, and Kenny the Rat Linsman. On defense, you had Ben Wilson, Terry Murray, Mike Busnick, and Bob Daly. In net starting for them this game is Rick St. Croix in place of All-Star Pete Peters, while Hamel gets the call for the Jets. Doug Smale, however, stays hot, gets his 7th goal of the year, opening to scoring 5 minutes later, however. Lindstrom scores, it's 2-0 Jets. Tom Gorans gets the Flyers on the board, however, but 2:14 later, Christian scores, and with 7 seconds left in the period, Anders Steen makes it 4-1 Winnipeg after 1. What is happening here? No, wait, they'll blow it. Barber scores in the second, but Hamel is making some amazing saves here. The Jets led 4-2 after 2. There's no way they can hang on. And midway to the third, McLeish scores. It's clear the Flyers are going to lose? Yes, the Flyers lose, which means the Jets win. The Jets win. The Jets win. What an incredible game from Pierre Hamel. 36 saves in goal, getting his 2nd win of the year. A huge team effort and a monster upset courtesy of Winnipeg. And this sent the Flyers into a small tailspin as they'd only win one of their next 6 games. Either way, this is a game changer, momentum changer. The Jets' fortunes could change. Who are we kidding? Well, we know, just right back to reality. Indeed, their next game is against Ray Bourque and the Boston Bruins. It's a 4-1 loss. Oh, what might have been. Now they reach the halfway point of the season as they hit the road to head to Toronto. The early 1980s haven't been so kind to the Maple Leafs so far, but they were still a playoff contender. And they're still led by Darryl Sittler and have such talents as power forward Will Paymon, Rick Vaive, and one of the best blue liners in the game in Boreas Salming. But they're on a 4-game losing streak and have only won 1 of their last 8. But a weak team is a way, to end the streak, I guess you could say. And the Jets, of course, haven't won a game on the road all season. And what? No way! 8-2 on the road? Another monster win for the Jets. 2 wins in 3 games. They're on a hot streak. What utter humiliation for the Leafs. Punch Jim Lack is seen shaking his fist. Oh, so hard. Dick Beddoes is crying into his microphone. Darryl Sittler marches into the main office and asks if his no-trade clause can be removed. But the Jets, Doug Smale, this kid may have a future. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. And Rick Bowness, yes, Rick frickin' Bowness, 3 points, 2 goals and a helper. Yeah, he's earned his main roster spot. Christian, Jeffrey, and Lucier are all on fire. Hamel, despite the domination, makes 38 sensational saves on 40 shots. After the game, Leafs cranky jerk-off owner and overall really bad man, Harold Ballard, was quoted as saying, Bobby Hull. To which a Leaf reporter replied, Sir, Bobby Hull retired last year. To which Ballard answered, I said Bobby Hull. Next up, the Jets return home to see if they can continue their good luck against the highly improved Vancouver Canucks team led by Tiger Williams, but it was bad. The Jets trailed 4-1 midway through the third period. But 34 seconds after the Canucks took the 3-goal lead, Lindstrom scored to cut the lead in half. Lindstrom then set up a Ron Wilson goal. The Jets only trail 4-3 as the game is winding down, but Canucks goalie Richard Brodeur is not making it easy as there's only 1 minute to go, but Christian sets up Barry Long! Scored the late tying goal. This team is just rolling. 77 Habs, you better look out. The Jets are coming. Only 1 loss in 4 games. Great games from Lucier, Lindstrom, and DuPont. The NHL has been put on notice. The Jets are gonna start lacking wins again. Yes, this is the Jets team we all know and try to tolerate. The tie against the Canucks began what would be a 6-game winless streak, continuing with a 5-3 loss against the Hartford Whalers, which featured a massive brawl that saw Barry Legge lead the penalty box to continue fighting with Jack McIlhargey. And they then traveled to Quebec, where they skated to a 3-3 tie with the lowly Nordiques, and Matson perhaps played his best game in net all year with 33 saves on 36 shots. Pierre LaRouche and the powerful Montreal Canadiens dominated the Jets 7-3 at the Forum. Hamel faced 48 shots in that game. Then it was back west all the way to Calgary. A 4-2 loss, Matson stopping 38 shots. Then they hosted the very same Leaf teams they dominated just a short while ago, but will let a 3-1 lead slip and lose 5-4, despite Bowness, Babbage, and Trimper each having 2-point nights. During this winless stretch, however, the Jets acquired Rick Dudley as a free agent. Dudley was a veteran undrafted left winger who began his career at the Buffalo Sabres in '73, and he emerged as a top forward, helping the team to their first Stanley Cup final appearance in 1975. After that, however, he defected to the WHA and played 4 seasons with the Cincinnati Stingers, where he saw great success, reaching 40 goals twice and 31 other time. He came back to the Sabres during the 78-79 season, but was released from the team this season. His NHL experience is highlighted by an excellent plus 58. While his WHA tenure saw him score 277 points in 270 games. He has 23 points in 38 games this season before joining the Jets and is a pretty good plus 7. And hey, the Jets are back on winning track, this time against a disappointing New York Rangers squad and dominating them 5-1. Matson gets his first win since the 3rd game of the season back in October, and did so with a sensational 31 save performance. But look at this, DuPont and Lindstrom, each with 2 goals and a helper for 3 points. The latter is playing the best he has all year so far. Ron Wilson, a monster game with 3 assists. Now this has to be a momentum changer, right? Well, they didn't lose to the Rockies, but again, let a late lead slip. Hamel played another solid outing in net. A struggling Washington Capitals squad that had the Jets' number in a 4-3 win, but Ron Wilson has stayed hot. And no, I'm not even being tongue-in-cheek when I say that. His 3 points in this night give him 8 in the last 3 games. The Jets then went into Boston and had a back-and-forth battle with the red-hot Bruins team, who was picking up steam after a bad start, trailing 2-0. The Jets came back to tie it, but would go seesaw 3-3. The Bruins 4-3, Jets 5-4 after 2. 6-5 Bruins, and the Jets tied 6-6, but the Bruins score a goal with 46 seconds to play. Again, late game goaltending faltering, costing the Jets 2 goals from Lindstrom, who's been playing great hockey this month. And wow, the Jets end the month on a high note. Another win in Toronto, and Matson has a 38-save shutout. The first shutout for the Jets all year in a 2-0 win. The Leafs have now lost twice the worst team in the league. That's some ammo for the Toronto media. Wow. 4-7-3 in January. 11 points, which is what they had going into the whole season, going into this month, doubling their total to 22. They might as well be the 1977 Habs compared to the rest of the year. Bill Sutherland, since taking over as coach, seems to have given this Jets club some motivation, as their top guns are beginning to work cohesively and stay consistent. They're showing a lot more drive and determination. And yeah, they had some losing skid, but that win against the Flyers really seemed to give a team a glimmer of hope that they've been looking for. After all, they're only 19 points out of a playoff spot. And it's a 3-way tie for first in team scoring, as the Jets forwards had their best month yet. 3 scores, 15 points. And Willie Lindstrom, who's been facing some heavy scrutiny for the way he played earlier this year, has exploded, leading the team with 10 goals. And both Norm DuPont and Ron Wilson were excellent, scoring 5 goals and 10 assists each for their 15 points. It was the first month where Dave Christian and Morris Lukowich were not featured among the top Jet scores, but they still played pretty well for the most part. Danny Jeffrey saw his production slip a bit. Putting all the jokes aside, however, Rick Bowness proved to be a very formidable forward, but the addition of Rick Dudley hasn't made much of a dent. Unfortunately, the Jets will be without Doug Smale for the foreseeable future due to injuries. Lucier and Trimper played well in many games. It looks like this core is coming together, improving to averaging just over 3.5 goals a game. Lindstrom's +7 showed how good he is all across the ice, despite his rough start, and he's able to contribute in the many ways that fans had hoped. And it led the team. It was a major improvement in that stat that the Jets, of course, have been awful with all year. The Jets' defense has also been barely anything short of awful, but they saw some improvements. And to no surprise, Babbage again led the team, in defensive scoring with 8 points. But had the best month of his rookie year so far, showing tremendous growth and maturity in his game this month. Mo Mantha returned and had a pretty good month, as the 2 rookie defenders were looking to carve out a good future. Barry Long had his best month so far since returning to the Jets. Mulhern battled injuries, but still looked good. But the best defenseman seemed to be Don Spring, who added presence to the Jets' power play core this month. Barry Legge, however, still struggles. The Jets stuck with just Matson and Hamel this month, and this is the best either man has looked. Both men won 2 games, and while Hamel's goals against average and save percentage were modest, they showed improvement over the prior month. But look at Matson! His goals against average of 2 .86 is remarkable, as is his .910 save percentage. These are actually excellent numbers. Of course, obtaining that huge shutout against the Leafs. And has played excellently in net. And while Hamel looked to be the number one guy, Matson, after a really bad start, well, could be leading the way the rest of the way to help the Jets to a hopeful strong finish. But of course, as we start February, after showing signs of improvement, reality rears its ugly head and ruins everything. Despite being the worst team in the league, the Jets hadn't actually been shut out all year until this point. But of course, that changed in a game against the Sabres. They lose 4-0. They looked better against the Penguins, but yet again blew a late lead and lost 3-2. Hamel making 31 saves in a loss. And a 10-4 shellacking out of the hands of Wayne Gretzky and his 6 points in this improving Oilers squad. The worst loss of the year, and that's saying something. Dave Christian had 2 goals in the loss, and Pierre Hamel had 10! Well, then Hamel let in 7 more goals in a 9-1 loss to Chicago that saw Lindsay Middlebrook return as a backup. So Hamel has led in 17 goals in 2 games and pretty much sealed his fate in Winnipeg after things were looking rather promising. 19 goals in 2 games, outscored 26-7 in the losing streak. Yep, Sutherland is sweating. Luckily, the Jets had a much-needed break in terms of the NHL All-Star break, that is, and thankfully every team, no matter how bad they may be, is going to have one representation. So the Jets made a very good choice and sent Morris Lukowich to represent them for the 2nd straight year. Also on the day of the All-Star game, they made a trade to try to strengthen their goaltending situation, and they sent, yes, you guessed it, more cash to the Quebec Nordiques for goaltender Michel Dion. Dion had spent most of his pro career in the WHA, having stints with the Indianapolis Racers and Cincinnati Stingers, and amassing a pretty good 66, 62, and 7 record over 4 seasons, with a 3.28 goals against average and okay .890 save percentage. But since the merger in 1979, Dion has spent the last 2 seasons with the Quebec Nordiques, and has been a pretty bad 15, 33, and 9, including being 0, 8, and 3 this season, with an overall 4.52 goals against average, and over 5 just this season. Youch. And his save percentage this season is .826. I'm sorry, explain to me how this is supposed to be a good thing? And then again, with his numbers, he fits right in. Anyway, let's move on to the Jets' next huge embarrassing failure, shall we? Well, at least they managed to keep up with this New York Rangers team, and, well, they only managed to let in 8 goals, meaning they've now allowed 27 in the last 3 games, but only lost by 2 goals this time, and Dave Christian got his 2nd career hat trick. Poor Matson had to face 54 damn shots. Doesn't help matters if the Jets have injury issues. Mantha's out again, so is Mulhern, hurting an already depleted defense, and Wilson and Jeffrey both missed this one as well. Consistency is an issue, so are injuries. Willie Lindstrom, who was red hot in January, is pointless in February and an atrocious -10 after leading the team with a +7 in January. The Jets get a boost, however, when Jeffrey Wilson and Mantha return for a game against the Quebec Nordiques at home, but now the Nords are showing major signs of improvement thanks to their rookie phenoms in Peter and Anton Stastny. But Michel Dion gets his first start for the Jets and against his former team no less, and he is marvelous in net, turning back many onslaughts from his former teammates. Dave Christian stays hot, and hey! The Jets get win lucky number 7! Dion plays excellently in goal. Christian remains the Jets' most consistent forward with another huge game. Sutherland is fired as head coach after the game, I guess, as the win does not negate the fact that the team has allowed 30 goals in 4 games. That's 7.5 goals a game, pretty much. But I mean, the guy was 6, 20, and 3 with this club. Give him the Jack Adams, for God's sake, what he did with this team. I didn't think they'd win 6 games all year. Well, Sutherland would actually stay with the Jets organization for nearly another decade as an assistant coach. Now enter Mike Smith, and hey, maybe 3rd time's a charm. Maybe this right here is the momentum changer. Who the hell am I kidding? Babbage gets injured and things get worse for the Jets, so much so the players start commenting again. After a 6-4 loss, the Dead Things, Red Wings, despite another 2-goal game for Christian, Mike Foligno commented afterward, "Our fans like it when the Jets come to town because it makes them forget about the terribleness that is us and the Pistons." Things were a little better against Hartford as a late goal by Barry Long preserved a tie, and Dion was again excellent in net, to which Whalers defenseman Mark House said, "Oh man, we only got a tie against them? Dad's gonna be pissed." In a 5-3 loss to the Sharks, where Lindstrom acted like a complete jackass and got thrown out late in the game, rookie Dino Ciccarelli said to him, "By God, man, have some class." Then it's back home to a 5-1 loss against the Oilers, where Glenn Anderson notched a hat trick against the Jets, and after the game, he said, "Even happy hour in Oshawa isn't this easy to score." So I've heard. It was a close battle with Pittsburgh, but the Jets would lose 4-3 despite another good game from Dion, to which Pittsburgh Penguins GM Baz Bastian said, "Hey, their goalie is pretty good." And to end the month to send the Jets on the 6-game winless streak, the Flyers got their revenge, doubled up on them 6-3, despite a 2-goal game from Lukowich. And Bill Barber, that is, during the game, leaned over to Bobby Clark and said, "Hey, you hear William Shatner's hosting Fridays tonight?" And the month mercifully comes to an end. Just after a mediocre yet lively month in January, the Jets fall right back in it with injuries, inconsistency, and just plain being bad. They were 1-10-1 for the month of February, as they still sit in dead last at 7-45-11. But hey, they have yet to be eliminated from the playoffs. Well, a bit of a far cry from last month when it came to scoring, as Christian and Lukowich, to no surprise, are back leading the way in scoring, each with 13 points. Christian had a huge 11 goals. It was also an abysmal -15. Lukowich was a bit better, but overall, seeing third place Ron Wilson with a mere 8 points seemed to be the best all-around forward all month. As other than these three, the rest were just outright pathetic. Remember the great month Willie Lindstrom had in January, as I mentioned? Well, again, those 15 points. Well, this month, 2 and a -11, after again leading the team last month with a +7. DuPont just 4 points, a team worst -16. Jeffrey On also had just 4 points. Peter Sullivan, after a callback from the minors, actually played okay for the most part. Tim Trimper had a couple decent games. As for the Ricks, Bonus and Dudley didn't make much of a dent at all this month. Lucier was injured and still is. The Jets went from averaging just above 3.5 goals last month to just 2.8 this month. More injuries to this young defense was really hurting the team in a big way. Babbage was out of action, which meant Don Spring led the way with 5 assists, which was pretty much the extent of his contributions. Whereas minor league call-up former Hamilton Finn Cup star Mark Flannery was the best defenseman all month. Not just due to his team leading +1, but he was also really trying to make his main roster chance count. Barry Long was still trying to be the best leader he could, but it didn't seem to help very much. Mantha played okay in the games where he was healthy, whereas Mulhern, when healthy, was not very effective, and Leggy was just downright awful yet again. And those goaltending improvements we saw last month went south, quite literally, as Middlebrook keeps bouncing back between the minor leagues and Tulsa. Anyway, Pierre Hamel and those abysmal outings against the Hawks and Oilers ended his year and pretty much ended his career. He retired from hockey and never played again, and has pretty much disappeared off the face of the earth. Remember those great numbers Mattson put up last month? Well, his goals against average nearly doubles, his save percentage saw a heavy decrease, and didn't win a single game, losing 5. Middlebrook saw 20 minutes of action, and it was about as spectacular as you'd expect. But acquiring Michel Dion wasn't the worst idea. He had a passable 3.77 GAA, a solid 889 save percentage, and won the only game the Jets had, and also the tie they had that month. So, this is it. It all comes down to this. 17 games to go. The fans are waiting for a miracle. The Jets need to win pretty much every game and need other teams to lose almost every single game themselves to make the ultimate miracle run of a playoff spot. Hey, one little fan had faith by simply saying, "Hey, it could happen." It could happen, but it won't. Babbage returns, but the 6-game winless streak turned into 9 to begin March, as once again they let a late lead slip, despite once again Christian and Lukowich playing great, and had to settle for a 4-4 tie with the Dead Thing Red Wings. Then it was a visit to Montreal and a 9-3 thrashing, a game notable for Habs superstar Guy Lafleur scoring his 1,000th career point. The only thing notable on the Jets side of things is Barry Leggy's staggering -5. And you think it can't get any worse, but it does. The Flyers pretty much make the Jets regret beating them in the first place, as the Flyers beat them 10-1. Barry Leggy is a -6, bringing his 2-game total to -11. So let's see, that's 19 goals in 2 games, 23 to start March, and they've allowed 52, and this 9-game skid, that's nearly 5.8 goals a game. However, what's this? A win? Their 8th of the year against that very same Habs team they just got disemboweled by mere days earlier? Indeed, your eyes do not deceive you. A 4-2 win as the Jets bombarded Habs goaltender Denny Aaron. And Rick Bonus, what a game! 2 goals and a helper for 3 points. Babbage had 2 assists. Shipper gets 1 of each, and Dion was outstanding in net, stopping 31 of 33 shots. The playoffs may be out of reach, but the Jets now have a new goal: to achieve win number 10. Hey, it could happen, But also, you have to get back down to get up again. So the Jets lose 4 in a row to instill that self-discipline in order to achieve that next W. DuPont scored his 25th goal of the year in a loss to the mighty Kings. Lindstrom proved to be useful again with a goal and an assist in a 6-3 loss to the Stanley Cup champion Islanders. And a 5-2 loss against Buffalo saw Lindstrom extend his point streak to 2 games. But alas, his hot streak comes to an end with an 8-2 loss to Chicago. But hope is still alive with win number 9! A huge, epic team effort. No, not even really being sarcastic. As the Jets make a late-game comeback down 3-1 against the Rockies and win 4-3. 3 goals in the span of 2-14 with the game winner from Trimper with 1:50 left to play. Hope is alive. The road to 10 wins has made the Jets Nation truly believe in, oh, I can't do it anymore. Ugh. Yeah, there will be no 10th win this season. The Jets go on an 8-game win streak to mercifully end this season. And it goes as such. Under late lead slips, one of many recurring themes this year, and a 5-4 loss to Detroit. Down 5-3 to the Kings, the Jets tied in the third only to lose 7-5, but hey, at least Lindsay Middlebrook saw 20 minutes of action in net. A 10-2 loss to the Canucks, where Barry Long was a very long -6. And it would be also the one and only game where Ron Lusto would play as an NHL goalie. Way to go, Ron. You made it to the bigs at least once. They were a lot better against the Rockies. Matson played a beauty, tied 1-1 late, however. They'd lose! Dominated again by the Kings, 7-3. Lukowicz with a pair of goals. Blew a late lead against the Canucks, had to settle for a 4-4 tie. Chris Mannery with 2 goals in that one. In the penultimate game of the season, a 7-2 loss to Wayne and the Oilers. Lindstrom scoring both goals in that one. And it finally all comes to an end, but in spectacular fashion, well, somewhat, as the Jets managed to tie the powerful St. Louis Blues as they trailed 5-2 in the third period and came back to tie the game. Call it a moral win, I guess. Well, the Jets finished March and the 3 games in April, the final 17 games of the season, with a 2-12-3 record, their second best month of the entire season. 7 points. The achievement of 10 wins was not to be, and they finished with a dubious record of 9-57-14 for 32 points, 21st overall, dead last in the NHL. The team that finished just 1 spot ahead of them and 20th, the Detroit Red Wings, still had 24 more points than they did. But it's finally over, and it's also over for head coach Mike Smith, but Mike Smith was far from done with the Jets. Well, of course, Lukowicz and Christian once again led the Jets in scoring in the final month, as they've been involved most of the season in that regard, and were 2 of the best forwards bar none all season long, each led with 12 points, as nobody averaged a point a game this month. Rick Bowness and his 11 points also showed he was a surprising contributor to this team at times this year. Everyone else stunk. Jeffrey and DuPont were bad, as was Lucier. Trimper had a couple decent games, as did Mannery and Sullivan, but nothing to write home about. Actually, Rick Dudley was good in certain games too, I should say. Speaking of Dudley, he led the team in plus-minus with an even 0 this month, which is quite telling of this team. Rookie Mo Mantha led all defensemen in scoring with 10 points this month, but was also a team worst, -28. But sadly, like teammate Dave Babbage, he was thrust into a terrible situation for any rookie defenseman. And speaking of Babbage, despite missing some games, he probably was the best defenseman all month. He led all defensemen with a team best, -10. Yes, you heard that correctly. The buried duo of Leggy and Long were bad. Plannery, after playing great last month, played badly. And as bad as Mantha's -28 is, at least he contributed on the score sheet. What was Don Spring's excuse? Just awful. Well, the goaltenders were collectively bad this month, despite a couple good outings from Madsen and Dion, but poor Ron Lusto. One career NHL game allows 10 goals despite stopping over 40 shots. Middlebrook's 1 period resulted in a loss. He can't catch a break either. Dion was the better of the 4, but that's like saying that napkins are good at a bad restaurant. But now we go to the final numbers. The Jets actually scored 32 more goals than they did the year prior, but still finished dead last in that regard, also like the year prior, with 246 compared to 214. Obviously, the addition of the likes of Dave Christian certainly helped a great deal, as did DuPont and Geoffrion, but still nowhere near the neighborhood of even mediocre. They allowed a staggering 86 more goals than they allowed last year, but look at their defense and goaltending. Is any wonder? They went from 3rd worst last year to the worst this year. Last year they had a lackluster but not awful power play. This year from 16th to dead last. No surprise here. As for their penalty kill, which again wasn't actually all that bad last year, at 13th slipped to 18th, with only Detroit, Washington, and Pittsburgh being worse. The Jets' top scorer, no question, was Dave Christian, who had an excellent rookie year with 71 points, 28 goals, and 43 assists. living up to his promise despite a horrendous -54. But either way, he at least showed he is someone who's going to be important to the Jets going forward. Team captain Morris Likowicz tried with all his might and was second with 67 points, leading the team in goals with 33. It also showed he too will be of value to the Jets going forward as they try to rebuild this crumpled heap. Norm Dupont was a surprisingly good acquisition for the Jets, as he finished third on the team with 53 points. But even these three had their consistency issues throughout the year, but not near as bad as some others. Danny Jeffrion went hot and cold despite finally breaking out as a goal scorer, but he'd only play one more professional NHL game. Ron Wilson also couldn't stay steady, but neither could Willie Lindstrom despite scoring 22 goals. Rick Bowness played great some days, bad others, and meh others. Tim Trimper and Doug Lucier just couldn't get on an even keel despite the odd good game here and there. Peter Sullivan and Anders Steen couldn't find any real steady ground. However, youngster Doug Smale showed a lot of hustle and fire in the 30 games he played, and Rick Dudley finished pretty strong. Chris Mannery showed fire some nights too, but his NHL career was finished after this season. Dave Christian finished 7th on rookie scorers in the 1980-81 season with his 71 points, a year that was stacked with many rookies, as he's on a list of major league talent here with 4 Hall of Famers and 2 other players with playing over 1,000 career NHL games. Of course, Darryl Sutter, the infamous Sutter dynasty, would go on to become one of the all-time great coach in NHL history. Either way, Dave Christian had a ride in the NHL. The leader in plus-minus for the Jets, and again, we're talking about those who at least played 20 games, was Doug Smale, who in 30 games was a -7. And again, showed a lot of hunger and determination, and indeed would be an important part of this team once again going forward. Despite injury issues, he was poised to become a star player for the Jets and a huge fan favorite. In terms of defense, Dave Babbage in his rookie year led in scoring on the whole team with 44 points, 6 goals, 38 assists in 69 games, but he was also a team worst, -61. And for Hiamo Mantha, another rookie and young defenseman on a team like this, that's just asking for disaster. But they at least showed some spark and showed that they were ready to be pros and did the best they could in the hand they were dealt. Barry Legge in the 33 games he played was ineffective and a waste of time, as was veteran Barry Long. Don Spring had a stretch of good games here and there, but couldn't stay consistent either. The Jets just kept shuffling their defense with minor league call-ups, some due to injuries, some because they just couldn't get anything on this blue line core going. Major changes definitely need to be made. And you can't help but sympathize with these poor goalies. Just horrendous numbers across the board. Michel Dion showed something late in the season, but there was nothing he could do, and even though the Jets probably would have been able to hang on to him, they did make the effort. He went to Pittsburgh, where he had a really good year in the 81-82 season, actually played in the NHL All-Star game, but Pittsburgh became almost as bad as this Jets team did in the next few years. And he retired from hockey in 1985 and became involved in golf. Marcus Mattson racked up the best numbers out of this lowly core, with his team leading 4.5 practically goals against average at .866 save percentage, and he did achieve the only shutout the Jets notched that year. Mattson spent a year playing in Tulsa in the 81-82 season, had a decent year there, then left the Jets organization, had a very brief stint as a backup in Minnesota, and then spent 2 seasons in LA as a backup for a pretty bad Kings team. He went back to his native Finland in 1984 to play 3 seasons of pro hockey there, before retiring in 1987 at the age of 30. Pierre Hamel looked pretty good in some games, but the poor guy was decimated by 2 disastrous losses and retired that year from hockey at the age of 29, and very little has been heard about him since. But either way, the 9 wins were courtesy of 3 each from Dion, Mattson, and Hamel. And poor Lindsay Middlebrook, a goals against average of nearly 6, and his winless ways would continue into the next season as a backup for Minnesota, then the year after that, playing for the New Jersey Devils. But he would obtain his first win in over 3 years as a member of the high-powered Edmonton Oilers, in what would be his very last professional game. He had spent the rest of his career in the minors before leaving the game in 1986 at age 30. And Ron Lusto. 1 game, 10 goals. Poor kid. That's as far as he made it. He would go back to play junior hockey for another couple seasons, had a very brief stint in the minors, leaving the game at just 21 years old. Man, this Jets organization pretty much killed these youngsters, and who knows what might have been. At least Dion had 1 good year after this, but still, just that they were never ever truly recovered from this. The Jets, of course, didn't fare well during award season, but Dave Christian got a few votes. He notched 1 vote for the Lady Byng Trophy for excellence in sportsmanship, and came in 9th with 8 votes for the Calder Trophy as the league's top rookie. The Jets did have representation at the 1981 World Ice Hockey Championship that year in Sweden. Representing Canada were Likowicz, Babbage, and Long. Canada, however, would only finish 4th place, but Thomas Dean, the Jets draft pick who would join the team next season, would grab a silver medal. Dave Christian led Team USA in scoring with 11 points in 8 games, putting his Olympic experience to good use. Despite a rough outing from his country, they would finish 5th in the tournament. Not one Jets player on this team is a Hall of Famer, and while that is probably the setup for an easy joke I could make, a lot of terrible teams, such as the 89-90 Nordiques, who again I've covered on this channel, actually had 4 Hall of Famers. You really can't argue for anyone either, sadly. Babbage had a pretty good career, played 19 seasons in the NHL and nearly 1,200 career games, but he's also one of the all-time leaders in the minus and plus-minus and didn't win much in the way of accolades, both team-wise or individually. Dave Christian would go on to have an excellent career, and he had more great seasons and managed to play in just over 1,000 games himself, but sadly not enough to warrant consideration for the Hall. Oh, this poor bunch. Inconsistency, weak second, third, and fourth lines, 3 head coaches, a young defense that suffered injuries and surrounded by lackluster vets, and those all poor goaltenders, most of whom's careers again never recovered, and of course an NHL record 30-game winless streak and a mere 9 wins. Yet General Manager John Ferguson, yes, he kept his job. Oh, despite it all, the GM would stay in Winnipeg. Fergie's era was just beginning. And this team, however, to be fair, was dealt a very rough hand entering the NHL from the WHA in 1979. The Oilers at least had their one megastar to build around. The Jets didn't even have that. But as this sad look comes to an end, the Jets will have the first overall pick in the 1981 NHL entry draft, and even they can't screw this one up. As luck would have it, it's one of those rare generational talents that is available. And indeed, Dale Hawerchuk of the Cornwall Royals, the best hockey player in juniors in all of Canada, the CHL Player of the Year, coming off back-to-back Memorial Cup wins, that's rare, which allows me to tell you all that indeed Dale Hawerchuk is going to be my next player biography series, so stay tuned. Until then, that does it for our look at the misery that was the 1980-81 Winnipeg Jets. Please like and share the video, hit subscribe, and until next time, I'll see ya!